If English is not your first language, then this video is for you. And if you work in a corporation, a corporate setup, then this video is even more for you. Now, I was born and brought up in India, and as a daughter of an army officer, I thought I could speak English well and confidently. But of course, when I landed in Australia in the year 2005, that belief changed. So in 2005, I landed in Australia and I moved there with my husband. My husband's brought up in Australia, and there was this one day that my husband and his best friend and wife and me, we were all having dinner. And at one point, I think my husband's friend felt like we need to include this girl into a conversation because she's not understanding anything we are saying. He started talking to me by telling me about Hare Krishna. He says, oh, my brother joined the Hare Krishna group, and he felt like that would be something that is familiar to me, so I will contribute towards that conversation. And he continued by saying, and when my brother joined that group, he met a girl there, another Australian girl, but the problem was that that girl rooted him. Now, instantly, I felt the word rooted means grounded him, gave him direction in life. Just like there are roots of trees that actually really hold the tree at one place, this girl did that for this guy. But of course, what I did not realize at that time is that the word rooted as an Australian slang means completely something different. I can't even tell you what it means. I'll put it up here. Okay, so I was very, very embarrassed, even though it was an Australian slang. My husband came to my rescue and then said to everybody that Anjali doesn't really have a contextual understanding of what we are talking about and what that word means. That's why her response. And everybody else was bursting into laughter, and I was feeling very, very embarrassed. Now, I thought I knew how to speak English, but then there is Australian English, there is American English, there is British English, there is English of a different types. That moment made me feel like I didn't know and I'm some kind of stupid. Australia was hard for me because when I said in winters I'm wearing a muffler, people would laugh because to them muffler is a car part, it is not a scarf. When I say VET vet or WET vet, it's vet and wet for me. But for them, VET vet is vet, WET wet is wet, right? So there's a lot of such things that happened there that actually made me feel like I was stupid and not smart because I didn't know how to speak English well. Now, this is even more important. This idea of speaking English well is even more important if you're working in a corporate setting. Because just last week, I was working with a really large professional services firm where there were people from India, Korea, Japan, United States, and from South Africa. And people who spoke English really well were able to express their ideas so well and had their ideas agreed upon by the senior leadership team, wherein the ideas of people who did not come from the English language as their first language, had great ideas, but the expression was so poor that nobody could understand. Therefore, I want you to know that speaking English well has got nothing to do with who's smart, who's not. It's got to do everything to do with the fact as to whether can you communicate your ideas clearly or not. And if you want to be in this global world, English is the way. You don't have to be some literary sort of person, but you need to be able to speak it well enough to get your ideas across. But how do you do that? Now, in this video, I want to give you 5 ways that you can actually make English better. Like you can make your English better. You can speak English better. Number 1, my personal favorite, the method I used to teach my daughter Spanish. I don't know how to speak a word of Spanish, but this is the method we use to learn a new language. English is a language. You can use the same method by using ChatGPT. Now, the biggest thing about learning a new language, especially English, because people just assume you should know how to speak English, is you can't practice because you feel fear of judgment that people will laugh, you'll make mistake, you'll not be able to understand. So there's a lot of judgment that comes into picture and you don't practice enough because you don't feel confident. Use ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not going to judge you. It's not going to say you're stupid, you don't know. How do you use ChatGPT is even more important. Open ChatGPT, put a prompt in. So I'll give you an example of a prompt. I work as a junior IT manager in a company. I attend meeting with senior leaders and international colleagues, and I struggle to express myself clearly in English. Please act as my English speaking coach. You are telling ChatGPT to act as your English speaking coach. Ask me relevant questions, have a 10-minute conversation with me. After every question of yours, I will provide an oral response. Please give me feedback. And you can literally have an oral, so you can get ChatGPT to ask you a question, you turn on enable the microphone, you answer orally, it gets recorded and written. ChatGPT will then give you feedback, and you can have a 10-minute practice. Just do that for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. It is unbelievable how encouraging ChatGPT is and how it really helps you practice with relevant questions, right? For example, in a corporate meeting, there are certain things that get spoken about, like what is the POV on this, the point of view on this? What is our GTM, go to market strategy? So it actually brings those kinds of terms in. So that's number one and my favorite way. Let's talk about number two. Watch English movies with Hindi subtitles. If you are Hindi speaking and your first language is Hindi, put on an English movie, listen to it in English, but watch the Hindi subtitles. Now, this sounds counterintuitive, but I think it is extremely helpful. Why? Because when you are listening to something that is in English and you're watching it written in Hindi, there is a simultaneous translation that is happening with what you're seeing and what you're listening. There is syncing of vocabulary, context, and emotion. And this works really, really well. So watch English movies, but turn on subtitles. The benefit of watching English movies with Hindi subtitles is movies are really enjoyable. They're not like I'm trying to read some major book which I can't even get past half a paragraph. So watch movies. Let's move to number three. Use gestures and facial expressions even when you're speaking simple English. Now, I recently watched a very famous Indian YouTuber speak in English. He speaks reasonable English, okay? It's not like he has very fancy vocabulary. He constructs his sentences in very, very good way. He speaks okay English, but he comes across very, very compelling on the screen. And I was in awe of how much he was compensating for his lack of vocabulary with his facial and bodily gestures. So he would say, do this, and why don't you? Rather than saying, you need to take this and move this here, he would say, you need to take this, move it here. What happens is that your gestures and your facial expressions compensate for the lack of vocabulary and the lack of the ability to be able to have really good sentence formation. So your passion shows, and it becomes an added tool to be able to convey that message across. Remember I said to you at the beginning, speaking English well in a corporation has got very little to do with the fact how smart and intelligent you are. Really, it's just a language. It does not, if you speak English well, doesn't mean you're intelligent. It just means that you can express your ideas in a global workforce, world where global workforce exists, in a much better way, because that is the medium, right? Number four, listen to English songs. Not any English songs, but the ones that tell a story. Songs and stories are two universal languages. What does that mean? A song, even if it's not in your own language, you connect with it, right? By this you don't speak that language, whatever the language is, right? There's a mixture of languages in that, but that song builds on you, right? So songs connect with you. Stories are exactly the same. Stories connect with you no matter which part of the world the story is from, because they're deeply human and we are all human. So songs and stories are two universal languages, right? Like anybody connects with them. Now, if you bring these two things together, memory plays a very, very big role. It becomes a lot more memorable. So songs that are like stories, I'll give you one artist whose songs are like stories. Now, these are some lines from the song. I'm drunk in the back of the car and I cried like a baby coming home from the bar. Now, these are lines from a song by Taylor Swift. Now, the beauty about this is that when she sings these lines, once the rhythm comes into it, you feel connected to it, you like the rhythm, irrespective of what language is it. But when you listen to these words, I'm drunk in the back of the car, okay? And I cried like a baby coming home from the bar. You can actually visualize it. You can actually see it. And memory, one of the big things that creates memory, something that you can remember, is something that can be visualized, right? Visualization, something that you can see in your imagination, is something that you will always, always remember. So whatever you listen, it automatically flows and you remember that. So songs that are like stories are really, really good. Okay, the last one, read non-fiction books. What are non-fiction books? Non-fiction books are books that are about like subject matter, like Zero to One by Peter Thiel is a nonfiction. It's a business book. Most business books are nonfiction books. Actually, all business books are nonfiction books, I think. My book is a nonfiction book. A novel is not a nonfiction book. Novel is something that the writer imagines. Now, why do I say read nonfiction books? Because nonfiction books are usually straightforward language. They mirror, if you're reading a business book, there's a lot of workplace communication in it. So you start connecting it with your thoughts. It improves clarity and structure, right? There's a lot of clarity and structure to it. In a nonfiction book, you don't have to imagine too much whilst you're reading, because reading can be difficult. But in a fiction, the author, the writer, has like a lot of literary value in it. So they would talk things like, the car was moving just slowly and the wind was blowing as the driver turned the window down. And then just right next to him was a yellow car. Now, somehow, this kind of imagination in songs work because songs are, you're listening, but it doesn't work in writing, because in writing you have to imagine it. First you have to read and then you have to imagine. It puts a lot of pressure. So what works in listening doesn't work in reading. So you have to read non-fiction books. Now, if you have decided that corporate world is the world where you want to see your career professional success, then English is not a language you can escape. You can become better at speaking English by doing these 5 things that I just mentioned. And always remember, English is just another language. Being able to speak English well is not a sign of intelligence or how smart you are. It simply means that if you speak English well, you can get your ideas across. If you liked what you heard, please hit the subscribe button, give me a comment, or just press the like button to let me know that you enjoy the content that I make. I'll see you soon here again with yet another way to build a successful corporate life. Stay storied.